Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown with me, John Ferguson. Now, before we get into reviewing what happened in Tokyo, which was a very, very narrow win for the Wallabies over the Japanese team coached by Eddie Jones, I just have to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you so much for all of you guys who watch, subscribed, especially to comment, who share this content and be able to grow off the ruck as a rugby channel. You guys have made me reach 1,000 subscribers. And I cannot express how happy this makes me and to know that I'm bringing you guys content weekly, sometimes more than once a week, content that you guys are engaging with and that you guys are learning something from and finding some basic entertainment value from as well. Rugby has been such a big part of my life from playing, coaching, and now analyzing it as well as being a rugby journalist. And all of this has now culminated into me making this YouTube channel Off the Ruck, where I want to talk to interesting rugby personalities, bring you guys those interviews, as well as journalists from all over the world to be able to bring you guys specific rugby content from where the Wallabies are heading into, but also just genuinely great stories from the world of rugby. And this week, I have Sam Lana, a Welsh journalist, and I'm sure if you guys know who've seen him around the traps, you've seen his writing, you've seen his own video snippets around the place on different podcasts. And so I'm bringing you that interview later in the week, and I cannot wait. But I just again want to recap by saying thank you so much. Thank you so much for the 1K subscribers that I have now. And then I want to continue growing this because now it is officially becoming something that we can continue to grow as a community, as a channel. And that means that you guys, as the watchers, please let me know, what do you guys want to see more of? What kind of content do you want to see in the future? What do you want me to specifically talk about as I'm heading into this Northern tour for the Wallies, but also the rest of the teams? We're going to be talking about the All Blacks and Ireland. We're going to be talking about England. Are they on the rise? Are they the next superpower? And where are France sitting right now? And as well as how is South Africa going to fare on their Northern tour? There is so much rugby to talk about, but I just want to go ahead again and say thank you so much. Going to keep bringing you guys good rugby content and making sure that it's enough detail and enough intricacy for the rugby lovers that are proper rugby nuffies that live and breathe this stuff. And I also want to make it exciting and fun and new enough for all you guys who are just on the verge. Maybe you like other sports, and maybe you've just come to rugby this season, or maybe you're just a casual rugby fan, but I want you guys to enjoy Off the Ruck as well, because I want to bring you guys content that makes you guys engage with rugby in a special way, because it is a truly special sport in my heart, and I want to bring that kind of excitement to you guys. So without further ado, let's go straight into reviewing the Wallabies' narrow win against Japan. So by now, I'm sure you've seen the score. 1915 is not at all the way that I'm sure Joe Schmidt and his men wanted this to play out. But it is test match rugby, and all that matters at this point, because it's not a series, it's not a competition like the Rugby Championship, is getting the W's on the board, getting the win in the way and the manner and the kind of situation that the Wallabies found themselves in was extremely important. And so we're going to go through some key events, some key stats, and we're also going to go through and look at who the Wallaby players and the Japanese players who really stood up in this game, because both sides have some exciting rugby coming up. And so I think we'll start off with kind of the events of the game. So going first to the scoring board and how it kind of developed through there. So we've got Nick Champion de Crepney scoring in the 12th minute. Then we've got Edmed with his conversion. Lawrence for Japan got his first yellow card in the 17th minute. Then Lee gets a penalty goal. Fluke then goes through, cuts through for that really nice set piece try off a scrum. Edmed converts. I was pretty much from straight in front. Takeuchi, the tight head prop, who had a stellar game. We'll get into his stats in a second. He gets his yellow card. The Japan's second yellow card on the in the 36th minute there, and then he comes on later to score in the second half in the 51st. Pisano then scores finally, after being denied so many times. He had a stellar game as well. Don't worry, we're going to get into his stats as well. Scored in the 56th minute. Benny Gunter, the man from Gunnedah, much like our very own captain, who usually captains, Harry Wilson. They're both from Gunnedah. So two Gunnedah boys going at it at the end. He scores, Benny Gunter scores in the 60th minute, and then Lee converts. So that is kind of the synopsis. Now we're going to go through my notes on the game and kind of what I saw. So obviously, we're still going to go through the game kind of chronologically at this point, and then we'll talk out and tease out different individuals throughout. But Lukan Salakaia-Loto, the big ball running second rower for the Wallabies, gets injured at about halfway through the second minute, but he doesn't actually go off and get replaced until it's about the 6th minute by Josh Cannon. So that's not really where you want to be as a Wallaby side, particularly with you're already using a lot of your depth. And Lukan Salakaia-Loto hasn't started a whole lot of games in 2024. He was a very big part of Joe Schmidt's plans in 2025. He's a very big part of Joe Schmidt's plans in 2024, and just has not fallen out of favor. But I think Joe Schmidt has just wanted to see a little bit more specific technique skills being executed at just a higher level, and repetitive skills all the time. And so he got his shot, but unfortunately, it looks like a rib injury has really soured that and obviously took him off very early in the game. So we didn't really want to see that. In the 8th minute, the inside center, Nakano, I believe his name is. Let me just double check that. That is, just want to get his name right, Nakano or Nakano. Nakano? Maybe we'll go with Nakano. He gets a HIA in the 8th minute. That obviously disrupts what they're trying to do, because he was a very important ball runner for them to be able to link up with Dylan Riley, the former Australian player, as well. Um, the Wallabies get into the after that HIA, the Wallabies get into Japan's 22 in the 9th minute, and Josh Nasser overthrows. Williams gets pinged for a high tackle as a result of this, and that is just one of those things where, because this side was such a cobbled together side, not to mention the injuries they had to deal with on the fly, really hampered their ability to be clinical, and that was something that was very evident in the scoreline, of course. But the Wallabies actually created enough opportunities. They had dominated possession and territory, and they were barely making any tackles in the first half. I mean, that's not to say that the defense was bad. It's just they had so much possession, and they still couldn't extend that elastic on the scoreboard, and they couldn't snap it because they just couldn't pull away from them. And heading into halftime, I think it was 14-5, maybe. That's not where you want to be. Or 14-3, it's not where you want to be. They could have been much higher. They could have been the mid 20s. So that's just I highlighted that because it's just an example of poor communication, poor execution in the throw and the receiver, and then all of a sudden you exacerbate that by letting the Japanese side off, who really didn't need any sort of invitation to be able to get into the game, but the Wallabies gave them time and time again an easy exit from their own 22. In the 11th minute, the Wallabies get turned over just outside the Japanese 22, and the Wallabies turn over the ball outside the Japanese 22, and Paisami dinks in a kick into the 22. And from that, the Wallabies get a penalty, which eventually results in the Nick Champion de Crepney try. Congratulations to Nick Champion de Crepney, scoring on your maiden captaincy game, and also being starting in one of your few first test matches. Congratulations to NCDC. He had a pretty good game. I think he led quite well. I was actually surprised about how vocal he was with the referee, and he played a solid game, and he did his role well, which is what the side needed. Particularly, actually, he did his role better than most anticipated, because he had to shift into the second row, because as we'll get to, Josh Canham had to leave the field as well, and that is not what you wanted to see. So you lose Lukan Salakaia-Loto and Josh Canham. Josh Canham to HIA, Lukan Salakaia-Loto to the ribs, as we mentioned. Not ideal. Then in the 20th minute, Leach shuts down the Wallabies' attack as they try to go wide, and Japan defended really well to keep the Wallabies out for 3 whole minutes. Their defense was immaculate. For the entire game, they tackled it like 96%, which is absolutely insane. They're insane numbers. Doesn't matter what kind of defense you're running. If you're in the high 90s, that is a beyond magical kind of performance from the Japanese side. So well done to them. That was really incredible. It truly was. Then in the 21st minute, Canham goes off for his HIA. Unfortunately, seemingly knocked out cold on the knee to Warren Durner. Warner Dern, sorry, Kiwi, who's going to go play for the Hurricanes in the 2026 season, which is super exciting. In the 28th minute, the Wallabies slice through with that beautiful try to Josh Fluke, where Tate Edmund wraps around, gives it to Andrew Kellaway. Kellaway breaks, seemingly makes the break, and then Josh Fluke finishes it off. Really, really good play. That's the only real time they cut them apart, to be honest. It was a very wet day in Tokyo, so that probably hampered that. The free flowing nature of the game, and that's probably actually aided the Wallabies, if anything, because the less continuity they had in the Japanese side, as well as that inability to maybe execute fully, that obviously gave Japan some breathing space. But they played very tight, and had they been better drilled and had better cohesion, they probably would have finished those things off. But a drier track probably would have given Japan more and more ability to shift the ball faster, which would have played into their hands. So Wallabies probably lucky that it was raining in Tokyo on the day. In the 33rd minute, obviously Japan got the second yellow card. 57th minute, Tazano finally scores after being denied a couple of times. And I'm not too worried about them being denied. Just got to score those ones. You got to make it obvious. You can't have one of them was done for a line out maul infringement at the setup, and another one was held up. So you just got to work harder to get the ball to the ground there. The other setup one, that's on the Wallabies pack for being clinical in that instance. And then congratulations to Aiden Ross, who came on in the 58th minute, who becomes just the fifth man to play for both the All Blacks and the Wallabies at this level. So super exciting for him. If we're going to go through the key players for the Wallabies and Japan, we'll start with Japan. Yeah, we'll start with Japan. No one deserves a bigger pat on the back than the hooker Hayata Era. This guy was playing like an absolute man possessed, and I just can't get over how hard he worked. So if you want to have a look at the tackling stats, he was absolutely insane. 24 tackles out of 25 attempts. He misses just one tackle. Jack Cornelison, the second rower for Japan, he also tackled at 23 out of 24 attempts, I believe. He put in a really big shift defensively, didn't really do a whole lot in attack. But I've got to talk a little bit more Hayata Era. He was getting turnovers. He was blasting through blokes in defense when he was making dominant shots. He actually hit Tom Robertson so hard that he had to go off. It was absolutely insane. It was shoulder on shoulder, both super low. And then he was getting pilfers and he was running really good. He was running really good lines and throwing really well. And his energy was up the entire game. He was such an important carrier and tackler for the Japanese side. Michael Leach, their stalwart captain, regular captain at number 8, he got the most running meters out of all the players, I believe, for the Japanese side, or the forwards at least. Let me just double check that. Yes, for the forwards. And I was actually really, really impressed with their halfback Fujiwara. I thought that he just kept the pace really, really high for the Japanese despite the slippery conditions and the torrential rain. I thought that he played on top of the Wallabies when he needed to, kicked accurately. He was a little bit unlucky with some handling errors, but that's just the way that it goes on a wet day. I think the Wallabies had their fair share of that as well. And Nakano, the 12, was actually really, really impressive as well. I thought that he was a big unit. I haven't seen him play a whole lot before, but he was definitely one of those guys that gave the Japanese backline some direction and some go forward and matched up quite well with Hunter Paisami and Josh Fluke. Now on the sorry, got to mention Takeuchi, the prop, because even though he got the yellow card, he definitely made up for it because I just want to look at his tackling stats. Where did I write these down? Um, yeah, so Takeuchi made 21 tackles. Ben Gunter made 21 tackles. Although Ben Gunter, the number 6 from Gunnedah, as I mentioned before, was a little bit poor in the discipline area of the game. I think he got pinged a couple of too many times at the breakdown side, as well as trying to pilfer when he's off his feet. So probably wants to work on that. Eddie Jones will want to see that improved. But he was definitely a defensive presence, which let the Wallabies know that he was around. And I just think that for a prop to be making 21 tackles, almost perfect tackle success rate is so impressive from a work rate. He also scrummed really, really well. He was on the tight head prop side, and he absolutely gave it to Angus Bell and Aiden Ross when they changed over there at the 58th minute. So really, really big congratulations to the Japanese side. Some really stellar performance there. From the Australian side, I'd have to highlight 5 players in total. So that would be Dylan Peach, I thought that he was really good on the wing, was particularly in the high ball, and he's also very physical, which was important in this game because that is an aspect that he had over the Japanese side. They were very fast. Their outside backs for Japan were very quick, very agile, and they just didn't quite have the muscle mass or the size to be able to contend with someone like Peach. So he definitely used that in the air and in the contact. Then Hunter Paisami, was an absolute workhorse, and if I can kind of paint that picture to a greater extent, he made 15 carries. So he was the second highest carrier for the Wallabies. I'll get to who was the highest as well. Angus Bell made 15 as well. I thought he was very good in the loose as well. But Hunter Paisami directed play quite well. He again tried to get an offload off one too many times in tight quarters. Needs to cut that out for England next week because he's pretty much guaranteed to be in that position after such a strong performance yet again. I thought that he kicked really well, and I thought that he game managed really well. Defensively, he missed a couple of tackles, but nonetheless, he is such a threat with ball in hand, and the tackles that he did make, extremely, extremely effective. Chop tackles as well as dominant hits, forcing the opposition back. Doesn't matter whether it was Michael Leach, Warner Derns, or whether it was one of the backs, he always smacked him, and he did so to the point where he got 2 turnovers as well. So Hunter Paisami, absolute great performance, just needs to fix those little offloads, and then he's well on his way to being, I think, a pretty good chance of sticking in that 12 shirt should the Wallabies cop any more injuries. Then Carlo Tizzano. Carlo was a man possessed. 21 from 21 carries, so the most carries for the Wallabies, and I believe that he made 22 from 23 tackles. So not perfect, but that is pretty damn close. And him scoring that try as well just goes to show how big his motor was and how keen he was to really contribute to the Wallabies' performance. And I'd say that his all-round game, although he only got one steal compared to Tanpa Paisami, who got two, his all-round game was so impactful. And if you are the number seven who is carrying the most, I believe he also made the most carry meters. Let me just check that from a Wallabies forward perspective. Let me double check. So Andrew Kellaway was the most who made overall for the Wallabies at 39. Yoshida Yazaki for Japan made 82, so he made way more. But then Hunter Paisami made 32 meters with his 15 carries, and then Carlo Tizzano made 31 meters with his 21 carries. So he was way ahead the next forward, which is all the way down in Angus Bell, which is 25. Obviously, Angus Bell made 6 less than he did, but that just goes to show work rate, and that goes to show work effort, and that also just goes to show how much you want to be involved. So well done to Carlo Tizzano. So that was Dylan Peach, Hunter Baisami, Carlo Tizzano, Jake Gordon. If you want to look at how a pest halfback should play in the rain, go back and watch this game by Jake Gordon. His box kicks were absolutely immaculate. And I actually think that a lot of people say that he doesn't get the ball out quick enough, but I urge you to have a look at when he does get the ball out, are the runners ready? Are the pods ready? So this isn't necessarily a positive in Jake Gordon's column, but you can't criticize him for not getting the ball out quick enough because he often gets the ball out super quick and to the point where some of his teammates aren't actually ready. And that is a bit of an issue as itself. And that is something that Nick White did very, very well while he was playing before he retired. He often slowed the play down, but it looked like he was playing quicker because the carries are more effective because they got set and then were able to move in motion when they collected the ball. But no critique on Jake Gordon. I thought he was really, really well involved in defense, reading, swimming through, and tackling the ball player who wrapped around. So he shut down a couple of attacks. And then when he had the ball in hand, he was passing well, and the box kicks were just immaculate. And it's a shame that Ryan Lonergan didn't get on, but it truly was, I think, as Joe Schmidt said in the post match, that they just couldn't afford to put him on in case there was another injury somewhere and they had to shuffle people around. So he'll get his opportunity. There's no doubt. I think that Jake Gordon just had to play that game out, and it's good for him because he hasn't played too many minutes recently, only just returning for the second Bledisloe in Perth, which was a little bit over 2 weeks now, 3 weeks, I believe. So that's really good from him. So then Jake Gordon, and I'd like to say the final player that I was actually really impressed with was Nick Champion to Krepny. I thought that he was just a solid player all around, I think from the starting side, but I think he probably shares that 50-50 with Harry Wilson because Harry Wilson came on and showed, wow, what an absolute test star he is at the moment. With ball in hand, he made so much of a difference to the way that the Wallabies carried, the way that they were able to get over the gain line, and then the way that they were able to then move on to the next phase and to be able to play on top of the Japanese in the second half. So really, really, really important player for the Wallabies, and I can't wait to see him back in the starting 8 jersey next week, which I think is almost guaranteed there. But congratulations to Japan for playing a good game. Thank God we didn't lose to Eddie Jones. And also well done to the Wallabies who have made Joe Schmidt made 13 changes and we still got the win. Massive gamble. It would have been absolute shit show had we lost. We were super close to actually. The result was close, as in the score was close. I don't actually think it was as close as the score reflects because we were so dominant in so many different aspects of the game. Line out was obviously absolute shambles because of losing two front second rowers, but I don't think necessarily Josh Nass's throws necessarily helped. Also, Jeremy Williams at test level, his height shows that he's a little bit shorter than the average lock, with Warner Durns and Jack Cornelison both quite tall, particularly Warner Durns, and he's very agile and quick and get up in the air very quickly, so able to disrupt the ball for the Wallabies. Tactically, they were obviously very, very narrow, and that was kind of frustrating to watch from a perspective of the fact that you have to play wet weather rugby. It's smart rugby, but it's those moments when you want to be able to break away, and then the Wallabies show that they can't really do so clinically. Dylan Peach got caught a couple of times on a wraparound ball behind the gain line. It just didn't look particularly good, and the Wallabies either got called back for their own penalty or they got called for a penalty for sealing off at the ruck. It just wasn't great. And then players like Era and Gunter were able to get and frustrate the Wallabies in those ruck spaces in their own 22, and that was just game over. Just really really good pressure relieving penalties from Gunter and Era, as well as Takeuchi. I think he got one or two there as well. But the Wallabies, it's wet weather rugby, and if you put a Skelton in there, you put a Wilson in there, you put a Lukan Salakaia-Loto in there, you put a Tupou, you put an Alan Altoa, that is just smart rugby. But I think they need to just get a little bit better at being able to pull wide, and that was something where I was disappointed with how I saw Hunter Paisami play, because he played exactly the same as Lenny Kitao. He was picking and driving in and around the ruck. He was doing absolute lots of the dirty work that as a back, I don't think you really want to particularly do, but that's what Joe Schmidt wants out of his centers. And it was just frustrating to see that he didn't take one or two of those opportunities to stand outside Tane Edmed, who I thought had a decent game. It wasn't. It wasn't. I think he had a good partnership with Jake Gordon, but I don't think that was anything of a particularly amazing performance. But then again, as I've said before, with this Wallaby side and the way that they're playing, the number 10 doesn't have to have a 9 out of 10 game to pull this team into a victory. He just needs to have a 6 or a 7 out of 10 performance. It'd be nice to see him have a 9 or an 8 out of 10 performance, but he doesn't need to for this Wallabies team to be successful. He just doesn't need to make any major mistakes. And I thought that Tane Edmond was relatively mistake free. So that was really good to see. But again, I just think that I don't agree that the Wallabies need to play wide. I just need to see that they're sharp enough and they're well drilled enough to be able to go wide when they want to. So that's the difference. I don't think they should be playing wide, particularly with the Northern Hemisphere going to be rainy and wet, but it is going to be a frustrating thing if we see them try to pull wide and then they don't have the plays where they need to, or they look clunky and they're not running the right lines. That's what's going to be frustrating, but we'll see how that goes. So I think that's enough talking about the Japanese and the Australian game. We are going to get into a full European Northern Hemisphere tour now that the Wallabies have this absolute, uh, this banana skin peel game out of the way. Thankfully, with a win by only by a few 4 points, because the Japanese never stopped coming throughout the 80. So really, really frustrating from a Wallabies perspective about not being more clinical. But that, as I previewed with Lockie there last week, that was always going to be the case. But we'll leave that there. As I mentioned at the start of the podcast, Sam Lana, Welsh rugby journalist and pundit, he's going to come on with a chat and have a chat with me tomorrow, and that's going to be out on Wednesday morning Australian time. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you hit the notification button down here and hit subscribe. If that subscribe button is red for you, that means that you're not subscribed yet. All you need is a YouTube account, which you can get with a Gmail or whatever. It doesn't take, it takes 2 seconds to just say, yep, make an account and you can call yourself whatever, and then join me in the comments down there below, because I want to hear what you guys thought about the Japanese game. I want to hear what you guys think about the Northern Tour, but save some of those thoughts for the podcast and the video that I'm going to release with Sam Lana coming up on Wednesday, Australian time. But please, guys, let me know what you thought about the Japanese game. Let me know what you think is going to happen in the squad. We obviously know that Darcy Swain is coming in for the injured Lukan Salakailoto and Josh Canham situation. There may be another person joining the squad as well. When will we see the Reg 9 window players come in? Obviously, we're still missing Lena Ikitau, Tom Hooper from the Exeter Chiefs, Leicester Tigers, James O'Connor there, Will Skelton from La Rochelle. We're missing players from a little bit around the trap. So when do you want to see those guys? When do you think we'll need them? And then also, please let me know what you thought about the Japan v Australia, the Wallabies game on the weekend. But until then, keep your eyes peeled. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And once again, thank you so much to everyone who has already subscribed and made this channel flourish in the way that it has. On to the next thing, and we're going to go bigger and better, particularly now for this Northern Tour. So make sure you guys stick around, and don't forget to share the channel with those other rugby lovers that you guys have in and around yourselves. So then, until the next one, which is going to be on Wednesday with Sam Lana,